In the summer of 1943, a U.S. Army medic on Guadalcanal carried more medicine in his kit than ammunition on his belt, and the most critical thing he had was not a bandage. He was 23 years old. The jungle around him had already put more men in the hospital than the Japanese had. Most of what kept his unit alive never made it into any history book you have read. Number 7 on this list will change how you think about the entire Pacific Campaign, because malaria took more American soldiers off the line than enemy fire did, and the Army's solution came attached to a rumor so damaging that officers had to physically watch men swallow their medication in the chow line. And number 15 was a piece of cloth so sensitive that parts of its story remain classified to this day, because the people who made it possible to use are still at risk. In this video, we will explore 15 forgotten tools that every single US soldier carried with him during the Second World War. Let us get started.
Number 15. The blood chit. Imagine you have just crashed your plane in enemy territory. Your radio is destroyed. Crewmates are missing. You do not speak the local language, and you have no idea if the people around you will help you or hand you over. You reach into your flight jacket and pull out a piece of cloth. The blood chit was a flag and text document printed in the local language. It said, "This man is an Allied serviceman fighting for your freedom. Help him, and you will be rewarded." Every Pacific Airman carried one. Eventually they were produced in nearly 50 languages. Each chit had a unique serial number. Losing one was a serious offense. Here is what stays with you. Many records surrounding World War II blood chits remain classified today, because the families of civilians who sheltered Allied airmen could still face danger if the full truth became known. Somewhere, people whose grandparents risked everything cannot be named yet. Number 14. The Escape and Evasion Kit. There is something philosophically strange about preparing a soldier to be captured. The Army did it anyway, and they were right to. Aircrews received a rubberized pouch containing a cloth map, a miniature compass, a hacksaw blade, and a money purse with foreign currency. The maps were called silk maps. They were actually rayon acetate, but the name stuck because of the texture. They were silent, nothing like paper that might crinkle in the dark. The United States and Britain produced over 3.5 million of them. The button compass was small enough to be sewn into a trouser waistband to survive a capture search. Someone thought through every detail of what it meant to be alone behind enemy lines. They thought about how a man would be searched, what currency he would need, the difference between cloth and paper in the dark. That level of care, for the worst possible moment, is worth remembering.
Number 13. The jungle hammock. Few items in the war were issued with more optimism and abandoned faster. Thousands were rushed to the Pacific in late 1942, expected to replace the tent, cot, shelter half, and mosquito net in a single package. The design was genuinely clever. A false bottom created dead airspace, specifically to prevent mosquitoes from biting through the fabric while a soldier slept. What the planners hadn't accounted for was trying to rig one in dense jungle, under fire, after 22 hours without sleep. In practice, a poncho on the ground was faster. The hammocks came off the kit within days in some units. Its failure led directly to improved jungle sleeping systems in later wars. The lesson cost nothing but the weight soldiers had to carry to learn it. Number 12. The signal mirror. A standard World War II signal mirror could produce a beam equivalent to a 20 million candle-power searchlight, visible up to 10 miles away. No batteries, no moving parts, nothing the enemy could intercept or jam. The GE Retro Directive model, a 3x5-inch glass mirror with a wire mesh sighting aperture, let a downed pilot aim reflected sunlight at a specific plane or ship, rather than just flash randomly at the sky. Pilots in the Pacific credited it with saving their lives when all radio equipment had been destroyed on impact. A man alone on a jungle island, everything broken, reaches into his kit and finds a piece of glass. He catches the light. He tilts it just right. Miles away, a pilot sees a flash. That's the whole story. That's enough. Number 11. The M1942 machete. In the Pacific, vegetation wasn't scenery. It was an obstacle that could stop a unit cold. Men couldn't move through impenetrable jungle without cutting their way through it, and a rifle doesn't do that. The M1942 machete had an 18-inch steel blade and saw use across every theater. It was produced by True Temper and Collins and Company. Even paratroopers in Europe were photographed carrying them. Worth noting, the USMC never issued dedicated machete contracts during World War II. Marines got Army contract blades through the supply chain. The Army designed and procured them. The Marines used them to survive. No batteries, no manual. It either cuts or it doesn't. In the Pacific, it almost always cut. Number 10. The M1 shoe impregnite. Almost nobody knows this item exists. That's a significant omission because trench foot was one of the leading non-combat causes of casualties in the entire war. Developed originally as a mustard gas countermeasure, the M1 shoe impregnite was a wax and oil compound designed to seal leather against liquid chemical agents. One can would treat 2 pairs of shoes. Soldiers found dozens of other uses: tent waterproofing, fire starting, lubrication, and, most critically, protection against the wet and cold that was destroying men's feet during the winter campaigns in Europe. The Army issued it for chemical protection. Men used it to keep walking. In a war decided partly by who could keep moving, that mattered more than most histories acknowledge. Number 9. The Cricket Clicker, June 6, 1944. 2 in the morning. An American paratrooper hits the ground miles from his drop zone. His unit is gone. He's alone in occupied France, and something is moving in the hedgerows. He reaches into his pocket and presses a small metal disc. 1 click. He waits. 2 clicks come back. The Cricket Clicker used a simple challenge and response system. 1 click meant who's there, 2 meant friend. No light, no radio, no language. Issued to the 82nd and 101st Airborne for D-Day, it became the thread connecting paratroopers scattered across miles of dark Norman countryside. It cost almost nothing to produce. It fit in a closed fist. In the hedgerows of Normandy, it may have saved more lives than weapons that cost 1,000 times more. Number 8. Benzedrine tablets. This is the entry that is hardest to sit with. Benzedrine, an amphetamine, was officially issued to American servicemen. The instructions were for extreme mental fatigue. Take 1 tablet. Repeat every 6 hours. Maximum 3 doses per week, or up to 6 during operations of extreme length. Over the course of the war, the U.S. military issued an estimated 180 million tablets. Soldiers called them pep pills. What the official literature rarely discussed were the come-down effects: severe fatigue, poor judgment, and aggression. After the war, studies linked wartime Benzedrine use to the spike in amphetamine dependency that emerged in the late 1940s. The Army made a calculation: keep the men moving. The cost of that calculation was paid later, quietly, by men who came home carrying something that had not been in their kit when they left. 180 million tablets. That number deserves to be said out loud. Number 7. Atabrine tablets. In the Pacific, malaria hospitalized more American troops than combat wounds. Not slightly more, significantly more. Atabrine, a synthetic anti-malarial, was the answer. One tablet, morning and evening, 2 days per week. Straightforward enough except for the rumors that it caused permanent impotence, that it turned your skin yellow. The yellowing was real, the impotence was false. But the rumors spread fast because fear moves faster than facts. The result was that non-commissioned officers had to physically stand in the mess line and watch soldiers swallow their medication. Not ask. Watch. Atabrain and DDT together eventually brought malaria under control across most combat areas. That is one of the largest public health achievements of the entire war, and it is almost entirely absent from popular World War II history. Number 6. Halazone Water Purification Tablets. Contaminated water kept more men off the line in the Pacific than many battles did. Dysentery, typhoid, intestinal parasites. The enemy was not always in front of you. Sometimes it was in the stream you were about to drink from. Halazone tablets were chlorine-based purification drops issued in small bottles, standard across multiple medical kits. Protocol: drop them in the canteen, wait 30 minutes, drink. 30 minutes. When you're exhausted and dehydrated and the water is right there. They tasted terrible. The wait was hard to enforce under fire. They worked anyway. In jungles where the alternative was weeks off the line with a waterborne illness, that small bottle was not a minor thing. Number 5. Sulfanilamide powder. A man has been shot. No medic nearby. He reaches into his first aid packet, positioned specifically for one-handed access, and pulls out a small envelope of white powder. He pours it into the wound. That was the instruction. Sulfanilamide powder sprinkled directly into an open wound to prevent infection while waiting for help. By the end of 1941, every soldier's kit had one. Wound infection death rates dropped dramatically compared to World War I. Not because the fighting was gentler, because a man who had been hit now had something he could do in those first critical minutes, and it worked. One line in the dosing instructions stops you cold. It read, "If sweating heavily, do not take the tablets." A battlefield restriction built into a battlefield medicine. They issued it anyway, because imperfect protection was better than none. Number 4. The Carlisle Bandage. Named for Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania, this compressed field dressing predated the war. By World War II, it had become the M1942 first aid packet, a sealed container made to fit on a cartridge belt and to be used with one hand because the other hand might not be working. When steel became scarce, metal containers gave way to laminated paper. Keeping a sterile dressing in a paper container in combat conditions required solving a problem most people never think about. Late in the war, packets were color-coded. Red-orange meant sulfanilamide inside. The color was the signal, readable before a man could think clearly, before he could read a label. That's designed for the worst 30 seconds of someone's life. Someone thought carefully about those 30 seconds. Then they figured out how to make them survivable. Number 3. The M1938 Lymphatic Compass. Millions of drafted men had never navigated with anything more sophisticated than a road sign. The Army needed to teach them to move across unfamiliar terrain, in unfamiliar countries, often at night. The M1938 Lymphatic Compass was part of how that happened. Graduated in both degrees and meals, usable by infantry and artillery alike, standardized enough to train an entire army with one instrument. Early liquid-filled versions developed air bubbles in extreme temperatures. In 1944, Superior Magneto Corporation solved the problem with an induction-dampened design, standardized in May 1945. The basic design remained in service into the 21st century. W&L.E. Gurley of Troy, New York, founded in 1852 before the Civil War, was a key manufacturer, a company that oiled building tools for soldiers crossing Normandy. That continuity of craft is its own kind of history. Number 2. The TL-122 Angle Head Flashlight. No dramatic story here, just a tool that worked. The TL-122's bent neck design entered service in 1939, made first in brass, then bakelite, when brass became a wartime strategic material. Multiple manufacturers, Eveready, Niagara, and contractors across the US, Italy, and Britain. 4 distinct versions, all with an exposed slider switch, designed to be flipped by touch in total darkness. What it gave soldiers was the ability to function when there was no light. Read a map in a blacked-out vehicle. Check a wound without exposing a position. Move through a building when the power had been out for weeks. The design evolved directly into the Fulton MX991U moonbeam flashlight still used by U.S. forces today. Same bent neck silhouette. Same logic. Some things are right the first time. Number 1. The P38 can opener. It weighs less than an ounce, 1.5 inches long, folded flat, stamped carbon steel, issued by the millions. Marines called it the John Wayne. Soldiers wore it on the same chain as their dog tags. Not stored in a pack, not issued when needed. On the body, always. 3 times a day, every soldier in the field needed to eat. 3 times a day, the P38 was the difference between opening a can and staring at one. In a Belgian foxhole in December 1944, on a Pacific beach in 110-degree heat, in an Italian village with no hot meal for 4 days. The men who carried it through the war and came home still had them. Some wore them for the rest of their lives on the same chain as the tags that would have identified their bodies if they had not made it back. A piece of stamped steel carried next to a man's name. That's where this list ends, and maybe where it should. History remembers the battles. It forgets the tools that made it possible for men to survive them. These 15 are the reminder.